These are your Unit 1A, Day 4 notes. In this video, we're going to work on Standard 2A and 3B. We are going to evaluate expressions, which is the subtraction of positive and negative numbers, and then explain why they're positive or negative. So in this video, we're subtracting instead of adding like we did yesterday. So let's look first at this. So we have another little game of tug of war, tug of rope, whatever you want to call it. And we have three blue people, okay? 3 blue people. Remember, blues represent our positive numbers. So we got positive 3, okay? Now, what would happen if you removed one blue person? Take away 1, all right? How many are we left with? We're left with 2 blue. And how would you write that? With a numerical expression? Well, start with 3 positives, and then we subtract 1 positive. So we're left with 2 blue, or simply the number 2, a positive 2. All right? Seems pretty simple. You guys have done 3 minus 1 before. Now let's look at the next one. So here we have the problem 3 minus 4. Now if we start right here with 3 positives, it's hard to visualize subtracting 4 because there's only 3 here. So we're going to change the way we wrote this a little bit. Instead of writing 3 minus 4, we're going to write 3 plus negative 4. These are the same, okay? Same problem, just written a little differently, okay? So now we can solve. We do 3 plus negative 4, we can see, well, how many more negatives are than their positives? 1 more. So our answer would be negative 1. So why could we do this? Well, because subtracting a positive number is the same thing as adding a negative. Same exact thing. Okay, make sure you have this in your notes. This is the most important thing. This is a big rule. This rule is very, very important. Subtracting a positive number is the same as adding a negative. All right, let's move to the next page. All right, on this page, we are going to solve these problems. These are subtraction problems, but 2 minus 7 is the same thing as 2 plus negative 7. So what you have to remember when you're subtracting, it's the same thing as adding the opposite. And I like to use the little rule click, clack, just helps me. So we're like, ooh, subtract, add opposite. All right, we have this subtraction problem, but I think add opposite, what do? Click, clack. Now I have 2 plus negative 7, and I just use the rules of addition, okay? So we can go ahead and we can draw our people if you want. So we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 negatives. Boop. And we have 2 positives. All right, and we can solve this by saying how many more negatives are there than positives? 5. So my answer would be negative 5, okay? You could also do the chips that we've talked about, right? I prefer this method, but you use any method you want. It's probably because I'm really bad at drawing stick figures, as you can see. So our chip method is where we take our first number in our expression, which is positive 2, so 1, 2. And then we add, the second row is the second number in our expression, which here is negative 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now I do my 0 pairs. and I can see that I am left with -5. All right, so the big thing here I want you to remember is when you subtract, you add the opposite. Add the opposite. What do? Add the opposite. So I'll set this one up right here. All right, so we have 6 minus 1, and that is equal to, so we have 6 minus 1. We also can write that as add the opposite or click clack. So 6 plus -1. Now I want you to go ahead and solve it using whatever method you want. And I'm going to fix this up here actually so it matches the other one, because that's what I meant to do. So go ahead, get this in your notes. 2 plus -7. So what is my answer right here? It is -5. Okay. All right, so make sure that you try these next couple ones on your own. Remember, what you're going to do is you are going to add the opposite. So you want to, first thing you're going to do is rewrite that problem as an addition problem, and then you're going to go ahead and solve using whatever method you want. Doesn't matter, okay? So pause the video and try these next ones on your own, okay? Hopefully you tried these on your own. For these ones, I just did the number chip method because this takes a long time. So, and remember, you only have to try one way. And you can use a calculator. So the big thing is I want you to just know how to rewrite these subtraction problems as addition problems. So I already said here, we have 6 minus 1 becomes 6 plus -1. 6 plus -1 is equal to 5. A lot of times when you see these negative numbers like that, they're going to be in parentheses, okay? That's why I did it. It's okay if you didn't. Here we go. 5 minus 5 becomes 5 plus -5. The answer is 0. Remember, those are opposites. It's always equal to 0. Next, we have 3 plus -5. 3 minus 5 equals 3 plus -5. Your answer would be -2, okay? So if you did not get these correct, I want you to fix it before you move on. And the big thing is that you were able to write these expressions like this, okay? When you subtract, you can add the opposite. I'm not sure if you noticed, but in all of these problems, we were subtracting positive numbers. So let's see what happens now when we subtract negative numbers. Guess what? We're still adding the opposite. Okay, let's look at these problems. So we're subtracting negative numbers now. So let's look at another tug of war, tug of rope, whatever you want to call it. So we have our 3 red people, which we know represents 3 negatives. All right, and what would happen if we remove one? Well, we can go ahead, we remove one. Get out of here. How many red people do we have left? -2. So how would we represent this? We could do 3 minus 2, or we can just simply write it as -2. Okay, but what's going to happen if we try to remove 4 red people? So we start with -3 and then minus, or we try to subtract -4. Well, there isn't 4 to subtract. So guess what? We're going to add the opposite. So instead of writing this as -3 minus -4, we can write this as -3 plus 4. So remember, these are the same. All right? So when we're subtracting, we can add the opposite. So -3 minus -4 becomes -3 plus 4. Now we can go ahead and we can solve. So we have -3 and we add 4 to it. How many more positives than negatives do we have? 1. So our answer would be +1. So rule, here's the big rule. Subtracting a negative number is the same as adding a positive. So let's get that in our notes. Adding a positive, okay? Because we add the opposite. So when we're subtracting a negative number, we're adding a positive. Positive is the opposite of negative. So when we subtract, we add opposite. Okay, so here's a couple examples that we're going to try. And again, you guys, we can think about that rule that I said, that click-clack rule. So if we have this first problem, you can see right here that we have -2 minus -7. Well, what happens if we click-clack? We're adding the opposite. So -2 minus -7 can be rewritten as -2 plus 7. And now that we've done that, we can solve by following the rules of addition. We start with -2, and then we add positive 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Find our 0 pairs. Bam, bam. We're left with 5 positives. So our answer would be +5. And you can also do the people that I don't always do because it takes a while. But we'll do it here for our example. So we have 2 negatives. All right, 2 negatives. And then we have 7 positives. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, we look at our little people here. How many more positives do we have than negatives? Oop, we can see 5. So that means our answer would be +5. Okay, so now you have 3 problems to do on your own. The big thing is that I want you to be able to write these subtraction problems as addition. When we're subtracting a negative, we're adding a positive. Because when you subtract, you add the opposite. So right here, what you're going to do on your own is you are going to rewrite the problem as an addition problem, and then you'll record your answer right there. So go ahead and pause the video. Okay, hopefully you tried these on your own. For these ones, again, I just did the positive and negative integer chips because drawing the people is hard for me. If that method works for you, then you should go ahead and do it. Okay, and if you are confused by the number chips and you want me to check whether you did the people right, that visual you used, just let me know and I'll look at it, okay? All right, so here we go. We already did this one, but -6 minus -1. When we subtract, we add the opposite. So click, clack. We have -5 minus -5. When we subtract, we add the opposite. So -5 plus 5, +5, because that's the opposite of -5. Let's go to this one. 3 minus -5. When we subtract, we add the opposite. The opposite of -5 is +5. Okay? So when we subtract, we add the opposite. So -7, the opposite's +7. Okay, so hopefully you got these same answers. If you did not, check your work, find your mistake, and you can always come to me if you need help. Okay, our last page, standard 2B, that explanation part, very important. Let's get this put down correctly together. So we have right here, we have this number without a negative sign. So this little square represents any positive number. So we're finding those rules. So if this is a positive number and we are subtracting a negative number, will the answer always be positive, negative, or could it be both? Think about it. Think about it. Oh, and the answer is positive. And why is it positive? Well, because when we subtract, we add the opposite. So now if we subtract, we add the opposite. Think about it. We have our positive number, and now we add the opposite. And what's the opposite of a negative number? A positive number. Okay? So when we subtract, we add the opposite. So a positive number minus a negative number turns into a positive plus a positive. So my answer is always positive. So how are we going to write that? We're simply going to explain. We change to add an opposite, and a positive plus a positive equals a negative. Okay, so in your notes, when we subtract, we add the opposite. So a positive minus a negative is equal to a positive plus a positive, right? And a positive plus a positive is always a positive. And I just wrote positive with that little POS because it was faster. So we know if we see that you mean positive. All right, let's move on to the next one. Here, if we have any negative number out there in the universe and we subtract any other negative number, is our answer going to be positive, negative, or both? Sit and think on it. And hopefully you came up with both. It could be either. And why is that? Because when we subtract, we add the opposite. So we're going to change it to an addition problem, and then the one with the bigger absolute value determines a sign, or the one that's farthest from zero. You're going to notice that these rules are the same as the rules for positive after we change it to an addition problem, okay? So let's write this information in our... Okay? So when we subtract, we add the opposite. When you add positive and negative numbers, the answer is the same sign as the number with the biggest absolute value. And in case you forgot what that means, that's the number that's farthest from zero. And a quick example of that, let's say we have -5 minus -6, okay? All right, what we're going to do now is we're going to rewrite that as a addition problem. So we can even remember, click, clack. So we have -5 plus 6, and that is equal to +1. And when we think about this rule, 6 has a bigger absolute value. It's farthest from zero, so that's why our sign is a positive. Our answer is a positive. Now, if we do it the other way, let's say we have -5 minus -4. All right, so we go ahead and we add the opposite, so click, clack. So now we have the problem -5 plus 4. Well, that answer is equal to -1. And why is it -1? Because the negative number has the biggest absolute value, or it's the farthest from zero. Right? Kind of a mouthful. Remember, you can use your calculator. You don't have to put this example in your notes if you don't want to. Just thought that might help you understand what this explanation means. So, big thing though is you need to make sure you have this part in your notes. After you do that, let's move on to the next one. So here we have this square represents any positive number. minus any positive number. So if we are any positive number minus any other positive number, you got to think, is your answer only positive, only negative, or could it be both? Dun, dun, dun. All right, let's hope you got the answer of both. And why the heck is that? Well, remember, we changed to addition, and the bigger absolute value determines the sign. So what I'm going to do here is I'm simply just going to copy this entire thing here. And when I say thing, I mean explanation. It is the same thing, because when we subtract, we add the opposite. When you add positive and negative numbers, the answer is the same sign as the number with the biggest absolute value. It is the one that's the farthest from zero that determines the sign, okay? All right, so now that I have my explanation in, I can show you an example again, just because why not? So, for example, if we have 5 minus 6, we change it to add the opposite. Our answer will be -6, because -6 is farther away from 0 than 5. So our answer is -1. Okay, so this number is farther from 0, our negative is, that's why our sign is negative. Our answer is negative. So we can, now let's say that we have 5 minus 4. Well, we change that to add the opposite. So we have 5 minus -4, which is equal to it's equal to +1. And why is it equal to +1? Because we have our negative number here. And which number is farther from 0? 5 or -4? 5 is. And 5 is positive, so our answer is positive. All right, this was another long video. Moving forward, they're going to be a little bit shorter. These adding and subtracting integers there's some complex rules. Remember, you can always use your calculator, okay? So make sure you have all of this in your notes. It's really important. And then turn it into Canvas.